dementia researcher with a blog and a rating.
Hi, I'm Naaheed Mukadam, and I'm going to talk to you about inequalities in dementia. So, dementia is an umbrella term to describe a condition where a person experiences acquired cognitive decline accompanied by functional impairment. It's caused by a number of disease processes in the brain, and the symptoms can vary from person to person. Dementia can cause difficulty for the person living with dementia as well as for their family and friends, and it is associated with large health and social care costs. As with any condition, it's important that dementia is diagnosed in an accurate and timely manner. Being diagnosed earlier in the illness can mean that the person with dementia and their family get the support that they need and can plan for the future. Support and care after a diagnosis are also important, and these should be tailored to the needs of the person living with dementia. Unfortunately, there are a number of inequalities in dementia that mean that not everyone gets the same standard of diagnosis and care. Inequalities exist relating to the age and sex of the person with dementia, their ethnicity, socioeconomic status, sexuality, type of dementia, religion, and presence of disabilities. These can be inequalities in dementia prevention, diagnosis, post-diagnostic support, and research participation. This article is dedicated to highlighting inequalities, as well as some of the excellent work being done to counteract these. It's not intended that this will be a source of support or advice for anyone who has dementia or is supporting someone with dementia. If you need advice and support, please contact the Alzheimer's Society through their website or Alzheimer's Research UK or similar organizations in your home country. Also, if you know of any work that has not been highlighted here but should be, please contact Professor Naaheed Mukadam at UCL. The first inequality I'm going to talk about is age. Most research focuses on late onset dementia, which typically has its onset after the age of 65. While this does account for the vast majority of dementia cases, young onset dementia still comprises a significant proportion of cases but tends to be neglected. Research on dementia prevention has mostly focused on late onset dementia, although there is some evidence that there are also potentially modifiable risk factors for young onset dementia. Focusing attention on these can help to reduce the risk of young onset dementia, but this has been relatively overlooked. Young onset dementia takes longer to diagnose than late onset dementia, meaning people living with it experience greater delays and uncertainty. Sex is another form of inequality. Dementia is more common in women, although not all studies have found this. Women also bear more of the burden of caring for someone with dementia. Differences by gender vary geographically and may be driven by discrimination and socio-cultural inequalities, as highlighted by a recent report. Ethnicity. Dementia is more common in some minority ethnic groups in Europe, particularly when population-based surveys are used rather than surveys relying on routinely collected data. These patterns of an increased rate of dementia in minority groups is also found in the UK, the Netherlands, and the USA. This may be because some of the risk factors for dementia are more common and have a greater impact in these groups than in the wide population. People from minority ethnic groups in the UK are younger when they receive a diagnosis of dementia, indicating greater susceptibility. Their dementia is at a more advanced stage when they are diagnosed, and they survive for a shorter time after diagnosis than their white counterparts. People from diverse ethnic groups present later, at a younger age, and with more depressive symptoms in the Netherlands. Barriers to accessing dementia care in minority ethnic groups include concerns about stigma, different explanations or views regarding symptoms, language proficiency, and cultural norms in people with dementia, and lack of tailoring of services. The European Survey of Clinical Dementia Assessment Centres found that diagnosing people from minority ethnic groups was considered challenging. Often culturally validated assessment tools were not used, and there was a lack of culturally tailored services on offer. There are challenges to diagnosing dementia in a timely and accurate manner in people from diverse ethnic groups due to cultural, linguistic, and educational differences. This is particularly difficult when literacy is limited. People from diverse ethnic groups are often excluded from dementia drug and intervention trials. Socioeconomic status and place. People from more socioeconomically deprived areas have higher rates of dementia, but have lower rates of accurate dementia diagnosis, being more likely to be diagnosed with unspecified dementia. Identification of dementia and therefore diagnosis rates, which are the observed versus the expected numbers of people with dementia, vary by region, with rural areas underdiagnosing or diagnosing later in the illness than urban areas. One paper highlights the many environmental and individual factors that contribute to these disparities. Types of dementia. Rarer types of dementia take longer to diagnose. Many people are not given a diagnosis of a specific type of dementia, which means treatment and support cannot be as well tailored for these people than for others who received a more specific diagnosis. Intellectual disabilities. Dementia is highly prevalent in people with intellectual disabilities when compared to the general population, with research finding that it is almost 5 times higher, and that people with Down syndrome have a 90% risk of developing dementia in their later years. There are variations in how dementia presents. For example, with intellectual disabilities, dementia is initially likely to present more with personality and behavioral changes compared to the general population, where lapses in memory are often an initial symptom. The consequences of dementia for those with intellectual disabilities are marked in comparison to those without it, where the development of dementia is associated with faster progression of the disease and elevated mortality rates for those with intellectual disability. In addition, there are significant complexities in diagnosing dementia for individuals with severe to profound intellectual disability due to factors such as limited baseline assessment tools. With no suitable benchmark for comparison due to flaw performance across all tests, it is difficult to establish any significant decline in functioning. Additionally, as individuals with dementia and intellectual disability may have limited verbal communication abilities, their subjective report of any changes are rarely considered. People with intellectual disability are often excluded from dementia research trials and rarely offered pharmacological and non-pharmacological interventions. Other protected characteristics. There is unfortunately very little research on whether the needs of LGBTQ+ people, those from different religions, and those with disabilities are being met by current services. One study found that transgender and non-binary older adults reported high frequencies of subjective cognitive decline and discrimination in medical settings. Another study found no differences in same-sex and mixed-sex couples with regards to rates of cognitive impairment. So what about interventions to address inequalities? With regards to dementia awareness, Moving Pictures and the National Aging Research Institute in Australia have collated numerous resources providing information on dementia in a variety of languages. The Alzheimer's Society in the UK adapted an information program for South Asian carers, which increased understanding of dementia and support available and improved understanding of the person with dementia. The ADAPT study in the UK collated resources for South Asian people with dementia. The iSupport educational program is also being adapted for people from South Asian backgrounds in the UK. A feasibility study of culturally tailored dementia information program for people from minority ethnic groups showed an improvement in knowledge and beliefs around dementia in a study from Denmark. Awareness raising has been done through roadshows and music and dance initiatives to help destigmatize dementia in minority ethnic communities. For help seeking, there are interventions that have shown promise in encouraging people from minority ethnic groups to seek help for dementia earlier, such as the East Dem study in the South Asian community and the IDEM Care study in the Black community in the UK. For cognitive testing, a number of studies have been done to improve cultural sensitivity of cognitive screening tools, and some more culturally sensitive cognitive screening tools are the Copenhagen Cross-Linguistic Naming Test, the Roland Universal Dementia Assessment Scale, the Brief Multicultural Cognitive Examination, the Cross-Cultural Dementia Screening, the Naming Assessment in Multicultural Europe, the 5-Digit Test, the Visual Short-Term Memory Binding Test, the Visual Association Memory Test, and the European Cross-Cultural Neuropsychological Test Battery. diagnostic quality is improved if informant-based questionnaire is combined with the Roland Universal Dementia Assessment Scale as shown in one study. For post-diagnostic support, some organizations offer culturally tailored support after a diagnosis, such as Myriade and Sahara, a service through the Alzheimer's Society for South Asian Communities. There has been cultural adaptation and translation of cognitive stimulation therapy, which is proven to improve cognition in people with dementia. The START intervention, which is a cost-effective therapy which helps to support carers and prevents depression, has been adapted for use in the South Asian and Black communities in the UK. A culturally tailored dementia care intervention pilot study in people from minority ethnic groups in Denmark showed promising results in improving family carers' sense of competence by helping them cope better with the challenges of the caring role. And a UCL team has recently completed the adaptation and evaluation of CST, that's cognitive stimulation therapy, and evidence-based treatment for dementia in people with intellectual disability and dementia. Overall, we can see that a number of inequalities exist in dementia diagnosis, prevention, and care. Some progress has been made in identifying and addressing these, but we still have a long way to go before equality can be achieved.
Thank you for listening. Join the Dementia Research bloggers and share your own views.